Violet was desperate for a cup and a biscuit to plug the hole in her stomach. For lunch, she'd had only the Marmite and margarine sandwiches she'd brought in. They were never enough. She was always hungry again by mid-afternoon and had to fill up with more cups of tea. Mrs. Speedwell would be appalled that Violet had a hot midday meal only once a week. She could not afford more, though she would never admit that to her mother. For a moment she considered joining her colleagues in the kitchen. O and Mo were two local girls in their early 20s, and although they were nice enough to Violet, they came from different backgrounds and treated her like an African violet or an aspidistra, the sort of house plant a maiden aunt would keep. Both lived at home and so had a more carefree attitude towards money, as Violet herself had once had. One sexy, one plain, they wore new dresses as often as they could afford to, and lived for the dance halls, the cinema dates, the parade of men to choose from. There were plenty of men their age. They didn't walk into a dance hall, as Violet had done a few times after the war, to find the only dancing partners were old enough to be her grandfather, or far too young, or damaged in a way Violet knew she could never fix. Hey guys, I'm back again and I'm here to do my review of A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. Okay, this is a book that talks about the main character, Violet Speedwell, who is approximately, I want to say she's in her mid to late 30s. And she is a perfect example of what we call in the 1930s in the UK as a surplus woman. So she has lost in the First World War her fiance and her brother. So Violet is trying to find her way through this desperate, in-between period. She is living with her overbearing, suffocating, overcritical mother, and her brother is married and he has 2 kids. So the story begins with Violet embarking on going to live in another city on her own. So she's got a job and she's trying to take care of herself. As the passage that I read in the beginning gives you an idea of the different types of women Tracy Chevalier is trying to show you. So you have the really young woman in her 20s who is, as you can see, the type that the men are the few men that are left are going for. And then you have Violet, who is an example of the women that are in their 30s that are so-called past, what is acceptable to be married and have kids. Okay, now, what is this book about? It's about that, but it's also about bell ringers and churches, the English countryside, kneelers and embroidery, and a lot of damn tea. Okay, so this is it feels like a very period set novel, and it kind of reminds me of like reading something like Jane Austen or something in a way. I like Jane Austen though, but this was not exactly what I expected. It comes around to what I expect, but not in the way that I expected. So just to be straightforward, this is a 346-page book. And let's say the first 90 pages of the book, nothing happens. We get a lot of talk about embroidery, needlework, kneelers, different cross-stitching and stuff like, we got all the vocabulary on the cross-stitching while she's introducing the various different characters. However, it took her almost 100 pages before the story actually really starts to begin. And that for me kind of annoyed me, because I figure you can introduce these characters and also tell me needlework. Needlework did not have to be like almost 90 pages of the book. I don't know. I was just like turning pages going, okay, and so where's the story? So the story starts around, I would say, yeah, mid-range through the book is where the real story actually begins. The thing that Tracy Chevalier does really well is that she has this chic to take real life past events or past or objects or things that you'd find in museums, like paintings, tapestry, that kind of thing, and she knows how to integrate it into a story. And that's pretty much what she does when she's talking about the needlework. So the needlework and the embroidery work and making the cushions and making the kneelers, this is sort of like the, I guess you could say, kind of a central area. Why? Because it's a place where you're going to find a lot of women together. And she does that in a way so that you as the reader, you can see what people are saying and what they're thinking about different situations that happen within the storyline. Now, the thing that's done the best in this book is, I think, the development of the character of Violet. We see Violet go from a woman who has been virtually living under her mother's roof for 30-something years and has now decided to venture off on her own. And you see how she stumbles and she struggles, and even once she has more confidence, you see how she's still struggling to live because her salary is very low compared to a man's salary. And there's a succession of incidents and things that will make you understand what it must have been like for a woman like Violet. And they call them surplus women. Why? Because there are like a lot more women than there are men because of the war. I like the way she finally does get the story going. It, it goes a lot faster. So I would say the second half of the book is better than the first half of the book. However, would I recommend this one for everyone? I'm not so sure. I would recommend this one to people who like books that have a lot of description and a lot of quirky dialogue. That's another thing she does really well, is the quirky dialogue. There's some, really good points where there are conversations that bring out excellent points in the book. So the book is told in the third person, and I think it was a good choice because it goes with this style of writing where everything is kind of overly descriptive, but it does have the third person has a kind of a snarky kind of tone to it, and so that makes it kind of interesting as well. Like I said, I expected something just a tad bit different. I knew I was going to get something about sewing of some kind, but it's the first 90 pages of the book that I was just not that happy with. This is not the first Tracy Chevalier I've read. I read The Virgin Blue, which that one I was like, because it has a dual timeline. You have the past and then you have today. And in fact, it's the past timeline that is better than the modern timeline. And then I read The Lady and the Unicorn, and that one right there, that one hit the spot. That one was really, really good. If you ever read The Lady and the Unicorn, the tapestry that she writes about in that particular novel is in a museum in Paris, and the museum is called Musée de Cluny. If you ever come to Paris and you've read The Lady and the Unicorn, you need to go to the Musée de Cluny and see the Lady and the Unicorn tapestry. It is absolutely stunning. Worth the visit, especially if you read the book. Yeah, I think I would recommend this one to people who are looking for something that is not particularly fast moving. That is the first half of the book, but that has that feel of England, of the English countryside, women, riding bikes, having tea. Yeah, imagining things like living life in England in the 1930s. That is what this book is. And she's very good at putting in, so there's a character in this book called Louisa Pessel. And that person was a real life person. So she always does her research and always manages to pick up something that is historical or that's real and throws it in here. That's why she's known for writing such interesting historical fictions. That's all I have for you today. Bye.